Good evening. This is December 31st, 2018. First, this video is basically a year old. I should have made this video in January, beginning of this year, but I have a problem of procrastination, like many of us do. I'm making this video for the people of African descent who were involved in the slave trade, transatlantic slave trade from Europe to Africa to United States. 155 years ago, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by the President Abraham Lincoln. And this document was to end chattel slavery within the Western Hemisphere, within the United States. So we have many questions that need to be addressed as it pertains to, did they free us? Can somebody else free you? Or do you have to struggle to free yourselves? A lot of things took place in this time frame when they had a civil war in the United States, the North versus the South. So you had maybe 46 states, give or take. I don't know if it was completely 50. I'm sorry about that. But the southern states and the northern states were divided because the southern states had slaves and the northern states didn't. And it wasn't that the northern states was against slavery. They just didn't like the fact that the South was making more money from cotton, and so they had more. Their money was stronger because of the South's money was stronger because of the cotton industry. They used to call cotton black gold. So after the Emancipation Proclamation, we want to deal with the last 155 years of progress or lack of progress, however you want to look at it. We've had a lot of obstacles, but we've had a lot of progress at the same time. There was a time when in this country it was against the law for black people to read and write. It was against the law. And if they caught you, you would be whipped. Sometimes you might even be killed, or you would be sold away from your family to another plantation. So the whole time that we've been in the United States for 500 years, the Europeans that have enslaved us have terrorized us. They have something that they'll say, somebody blew up a building and they call it a terror attack. Well, we were terrorized every single day. Our women were raped every day, and even the men were raped. Our children were made to work and made to obey them. Our names were stripped from us. So consequently, the majority of people in this country, we have names that reflect those that owned us. So when you see a football game or a basketball game, and you look on the jersey, most of these names are from our slave masters, which is ironic because we had a situation last year. Colin Kaepernick, a NFL football player, was tired of the oppression of black males and black females being murdered by the police. And so his question was, what is law enforcement? What is the government? What is anybody doing about these atrocities? So when the national anthem was played at these football games, instead of him standing up like everybody else, he took a knee. So the question for us today, after 155 years of, on paper, what they call freedom, but we know that it was not always um, equitable in our favor. But last year, there were activists that asked the black community, do not watch football games until Colin Kaepernick gets a job. And once again, we failed miserably. Our unity faltered because so many people didn't care. Their football, watching football was more important than the stance that he was taking. And consequently, he was speaking up for us. He was speaking up for those that didn't have a voice, that those that, you know, um, mothers who lost their sons, wives who lost their husbands, grandparents who lost their grandchild over police brutality. And all he, not him, because he didn't ask, but some of the activists asked that black people not watch football games, not wear any NFL paraphernalia, and don't buy anything. But week after week, I would be around different places and I would see these slave-minded people, because that's what they are, people who don't understand what freedom is, how valuable it is, and they're not willing to fight for it, even to just not watch the football game. It's like football is so important. We had to watch football. We couldn't take the knee as he did. We couldn't sacrifice. So now the NFL decided to give one of the movements, maybe it was Black Lives Movement or some other entity, $100 million in 10 years, which is better than nothing. Um, and if they have an organized plan, maybe that $100 million will benefit them. But the issues that we have over the last 155 years have been education, the destruction of our family, economics, um, police brutality, police injustice. When President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation ending slavery on paper, um, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution said there could be no more indigent servitude unless you commit a crime. So over the last 155 years, the black community within the United States has been criminalized, and we have been going to prisons. And so slavery ended on paper, but it was organized by the criminal justice system to incarcerate us because we didn't have adequate education, we didn't own any businesses or very little businesses, and so um, some people engaged in crime. Well, if you look over the last 50, 70 years, you'll find other people who came to America and they were, as we were, permanent social underclass. Not to the degree that we were because of slavery, because of us losing our identity, us being forced um, to be second class citizens. Other people have three examples: the Italians, the Jews, and the Irish came to the United States, and all three of them created a mafia because the Europeans that were in power, the British, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, whoever they were, looked down upon these individuals and called them poor white trash, and they treated them as such. So the three groups created a mafia, and through this mafia, they were able to create universities, banks, professional sports team, a city in Nevada called Las Vegas, where they make billions of dollars off legal gambling. So it shows you that we were not the only people that were oppressed. And I would never say that. I will always point to, over the last 155 years, the Chinese who built the railroads, and then the Europeans came with the Chinese Exclusion Act and said that they didn't want any more Chinese within the United States. But for black people, we have to look at the abuse that we've taken. We have to question why we have never been given reparations. To repair, reparations is to say, just like the justice system. The justice system says you committed a felony, and to pay for that felony, the state government is going to give you 10 years in prison to pay dollar for dollar for what you did. And we were the slaves in this country. We built this country. We made America one of the most wealthy countries on the face of the earth, and we never got paid. And the sad part is that we haven't demanded to be paid, because that's what free people do. When you're free and you've been oppressed, then the first thing you want to do is address those wrongs. But because we've been so busy trying to assimilate, trying to be a part of America, we haven't asked for what's due to us. And at the same time we haven't asked, we have been shamelessly working for the United States government and the military and helping them kill and oppress other dark people around the world. 50 years ago, Muhammad Ali, the great boxer, Muslim advocate for justice in the United States, refused to go to Vietnam when America was fighting in Vietnam. They didn't ask him to be on the front line. He was not going to be in the infantry. He was just going to be like a clown, entertaining the troops with poetry and his fancy footwork. He refused. He said, I won't go to Vietnam and help America, white America, oppress one of my dark-skinned brothers, my dark brothers around the world. The white man at this time in America, I prefer, European, not white, because white is a description, an adjective. But the reason why I use black, because black is a symbol of power. And because I don't know the name of what they call the continent of Africa, because I don't believe that that's the name. So I don't use that. I just say those of us that have been oppressed in Black America. Some people call themselves African Americans. But if we were truly Americans, there would be no need for me to make this video. There would be no need for activists around the country. There would have been no need for the Black Panther Party. Any of the righteous groups that stood up to defend us. Mentioning the Black Panther Party, there was an organization called the Black Panther Party in the 1960s after the assassination of one of our greatest leaders, El-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X. He was martyred, assassinated by the United States government because he wanted freedom, and he demanded freedom by any means necessary. Intelligent means, physical means, economic means, by any means necessary. And so, because of his stance, because his uncompromising stance, he was assassinated in 1965. Also, the Black Panther Party was founded a couple years after his assassination, and they didn't last even 5 years, which is a testament to the United States policy to. They had a program by the FBI called COINTELPRO, counterintelligence to destroy any black potential messiahs. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party. And one of the things that the FBI claimed in the 1950s and 1960s, that they were fighting communists, but they weren't fighting communists. They used the concept of fighting communists to destroy any black organization, to infiltrate these black organizations. So they assassinated. We lost Medgar Evers, a freedom fighter in Mississippi, in 1963. Malcolm was assassinated in 1965. Dr. Martin Luther King, the advocate for peace, was assassinated in 1968. Fred Hampton, the revolutionary of the Black Panther Party in Chicago, Illinois, was assassinated 50 years ago in 1968. And this whole year went by, and I don't remember anybody, including myself, doing anything to commemorate Fred Hampton. Great revolutionary, one of my heroes. At 21 years old in 1968, he said to the United States government, "I am a revolutionary and I will fight for the freedom of my people." So they assassinated him. Now what's happening 50 years after his assassination in the city of Chicago, one of the largest urban black communities within the United States. The number one killings that have taken place in the United States are in Chicago. So you have Chicago, you have Los Angeles, you have Detroit, Philadelphia, all these major cities, Oakland, all these cities that black people reside, and we're committing genocide. We're killing each other. We have an organization that's famous called the Crips and the Bloods, founded in Los Angeles. Now, if they got their roots from Chicago or New York, some of the original gangs, that's debatable. But at any rate, the Crips and Bloods have existed for over the last 40 years. And I don't know the numbers of black men and women that have been murdered in this time frame, but it's pretty high. The Klan hasn't killed as many black people as the Crips and Bloods have. I consider certain people in the black community as committing acts of treason, which is like, treason is like betraying your country. So I consider treason betraying the black community. I consider the Crips and Bloods to be in treason of the black community. I consider pimps to be in treason of the black community. I consider Louis Farrakhan to be in treason of the black community because of his role in the assassination of Malcolm X, which I don't believe that the Nation of Islam had anything to do with it, but they didn't defend him. They didn't say, well, he's not in the Nation of Islam anymore, but he's still our brother. And I'll be damned if we're gonna let these white devils, that's what they called the white man, they called them devils. We're gonna allow y'all to assassinate him, and they said absolutely nothing. In fact, Louis Farrakhan gloated as if they had something to do with it. And I don't believe they had anything to do with it. But it's just the point that in the wake of his assassination, his wife is grieving. He's got 5 children. The Nation of Islam, Malcolm built the Nation of Islam. Elijah Muhammad started it, but Malcolm built the Nation of Islam. So they should have took care of Betty and the children. Even, what I'm saying? That's what real people do. They say, you know what? He's not in the nation anymore, but we respect his work. We respect, who he was, his legacy. But they didn't do that. And so the Nation of Islam has failed the black community over the last 53 years. Because not only did they not honor Malcolm and his legacy, they actually murdered people who defected from the Nation of Islam. They murdered children. They murdered adults who left them because they are a cult. And it's sad, after all this time in the United States, that black people don't know the difference between Muslims and the Nation of Islam. It's criminal, because I meet people from all over the country, whites, Mexicans, other people, and they say, "Oh yeah, you're Muslim," and they know the difference. But black people, oh, you don't sell bean pies, you don't sell, no, no. I believe at one time they were a great organization, and that's the reason why in 1964, when Malcolm split with them for good after 63 November 22nd, when Malcolm was responding to a journalist asking about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, who's Irish, who was supported by the entire black community, basically, and that's how he became president, because the whites were evenly divided, and the black Americans threw their vote behind Kennedy because he was a smooth, fast talker, and he said that he would help the blacks. So the Civil Rights Bill sat on his desk from January of 63 to November of, January of 1960, excuse me, to November of 1963, 3 years, and he didn't sign one bill. Lyndon B. Johnson, the president, who was the vice president at the time, after the assassination, he actually signed the Civil Rights Bill. Um, One of the reasons that we have to discuss these things, because we have to ask, what did Emancipation Proclamation mean to us? What did the signing of the Civil Rights Bill mean to us? What did the Voting Rights Bill mean to us? That we can vote for Republican Party, the Democratic Party. When slavery ended on paper, black people were of the Republican Party. And I don't know how many years passed by but we basically adopted the Democratic Party, which the Democratic Party was responsible for slavery. So when Emancipation Proclamation was signed after the Civil War, and they claim that the South lost the war, that the North defeated the South. And so with this defeat, first of all, the South committed treason because they tried to succeed the Union. They tried to leave the Union, which would have made the United States a weak country, cutting it in half. And so by any means necessary, they couldn't allow that. So they fought cousins, fathers, brothers, relatives. Same thing when America defected from England, because they refused to pay taxes on tea. They fought cousins, brothers, grandfathers, fathers, family. And so that's what sometimes in your quest for freedom, sometimes you have to fight people that on a normal basis that you would not. So it was once on the plantation when we were enslaved, it was against the law for us to read and write. So now that we can read and write, it's criminal neglect that the black community does not read and write. And today we have black people on the university, on the college campuses, getting bachelor's degrees, master's degree, and PhDs. Studied, studious, lawyers, you name it, engineers, everything you can imagine. For 8 years, 2 terms, we had a black president who was a graduate from Harvard University, and so was his wife, Barack Hussein Obama, who was born into a Muslim family. His father's from Kenya, Muslim, and his mother's a European. But at any rate, we have these so-called educated people, but yet if you go to any predominantly black community within the United States, that's where you'll see the highest rate of genocide, incarceration, suicide, homicide, infant rate mortality, or abortion, any negative statistic you will find in the black community. So we have to question, in the 155 years of so-called freedom, what have we done to say that we are a free people? Um, Education has to be something that's important to us, but yet in school, we have the lowest marks out of anybody in the United States in math and reading and science. And prior to us coming to the United States, Africa was the leader in the world in all these areas. Language, we spoke hundreds of languages in Africa. We come to the United States, and they wouldn't allow us to read and write. One of the reasons why we have to question things is because sometimes people say things, and because they appear to be in authority, we accept what they say. Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States, said that there is an innate uh, inferiority of blacks uh, over the year compared to the Europeans. And I always ask people this question: did he really mean that? Did he really believe that? And in my conclusion is absolutely not. Just because he's a liar, just like the rest of them. Because they had relationships with people around the world, and they know the history. They got libraries in Congress. They have, they know about the great African civilizations: Timbuktu, Mali, Songhai, Egypt, Sudan. They know. They know. We taught them how to read. We taught them how to take baths. We liberated them. We were in Spain for 8 centuries, Andalusia, and we taught them. So when they oppressed us, they flipped the script. They took what they had learned from us and said that we can't read and write. So the question is, in evaluating the truth and the lies, if they say that we cannot read and write, then what would be the harm from allowing us to read and write? If we're inferior, we can't read, go ahead. Here's a book. Here's a teacher. We'll teach you because you're not going to learn anyway. They knew this was a lie, but they perpetuated the lie so that they could keep us down long enough so that they can get ahead. Now that we're able to read and write, we're not reading the right books. We're not liberating ourselves. In 1933, a man by the name of Carter G. Woodson wrote one of the most important books that any black thinker could ever read. And even whites and Mexicans or whoever else uh, chooses to be a critical thinker, you would read this book. And this book is called The Miseducation of the Negro. It was written in 1933. And the premise of the book is this: when you control a person's thinking, you don't have to worry about their actions. You don't have to tell them, go to the back of the bus, go to the back door, to the kitchen and eat your meal. You don't have to tell them that. If you miseducate them and you can control their education, you don't have to worry about them. And so that's where we find ourselves today. Carter G. Woodson, when he wrote this book, he was talking about the black colleges and universities: Howard University, Hampton, Clark, Brown. I mean, not Brown, excuse me, Grambling University, and all the other Southern University in Louisiana, all the other black historical colleges and universities. Because the question that I want everybody to ask themselves is, what good are these institutions if within every black community in the United States, whether it be in uh, Memphis, Tennessee, Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, California, Oakland, California, Watts, California, Inglewood, California, Cleveland, Ohio, since anywhere, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, you name it, wherever the black community is, and we have all these educated people in the United States, yet we don't control any banks, we don't have a hospital, we don't control the schools. And one of the reasons why it's so important to have your own schools, because our great thinker Malcolm X said that any man or woman that allows their enemy to educate their children is a fool. And that's what we do today. When this country was, when the Catholics came to America, the Italians and the Irish, when they came to America, they didn't trust putting their children in Protestant schools ran by Protestants, so they created Catholic schools. They're European, just like the British and the French and the Portuguese, but they did not trust their children in Protestant schools, so they created their own schools. And now Catholic schools are number one, not in the United States, in the entire world. How is it that black people can trust these people who enslaved us, who never paid us, and have used everything in their power in the government to destroy us? We had today, a lot of people, a lot of black people know about Black Wall Street because it's on the internet, and so we'll say, yeah, we had Black Wall Street, but we don't understand how significant it is. Black Wall Street took place between the 1920s and the 1930s. We're talking 57 to 60 years after the slave trade ended. We had the highest income per capita, not in the United States, in the entire world. How did that happen? Because when you're an oppressed people and you have unity, there's no limit to where you can go. So their whole strategy over the last 155 years is divide and conquer, to keep us weak. As long as we're killing each other, as long as we're smoking dope and drinking alcohol and exploiting our women, we'll never be able to stand up against the government, those that are oppressing us. Now, there's a sister, a scholar, a doctor, name is Harrietta Washington, I think it is. She wrote a book called Medical Apartheid. This is over the last 155 years, which I think she went even further than that, because she was talking about in slavery how they experimented on black women without anesthesia, and that's what they. I mean, we you can't even imagine the torture that we suffered in this country. There's a book written by a European called Slavery by Another Name, talking about Alabama. I forgot the city it was. I forgot the city, but in Alabama, they were catching black men, women too, but mostly black men on the street, and charging them for vagrancy because they didn't have a job. Well, the Europeans controlled all the jobs. They wouldn't give us jobs. So they went up and grabbed this person to say, do you have a job? He says, no. They slapped the cuffs on him and put him in prison, or put him in the county jail. And then they sell him to one of their friends who owns a plantation. So he works for this plantation owner. So the book, I don't know the author's name, but the title is called Slavery by Another Name. It's an excellent book. I love reading, because there's a saying, if you want to hide something from black people, put it in the book. Well, when I heard this, I was appalled. I was pissed. I was livid. But when I looked around, I analyzed it, and it's true. You know that reading is not something that we have taken a liking to, even. But this book, if you get a chance, you want to read The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. You want to read From Superman to Man by J.A. Rogers. You want to read I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. You want to read The Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. You want to read The Judas Factor by Carl Evans. You want to be a reader. You want to be a critical thinker. Turn the TV off. Stop watching so much TV. A brilliant man in Chicago by the name of Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu wrote Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. I'm not sure how many volumes that he has, but excellent, excellent book. Well, one of the things that in the destruction of our youth is the fact that we love entertainment. We love to watch TV. Turn the TV off and start reading. If the black community in the United States was to take on reading as if it was a life jacket, something that you were going to die if you didn't do. If we took on reading, if we read the dictionary, if we read books, then we would be a powerful people. This is what the Black Panther Party did. The Black Panther Party studied the Constitution. They studied the California codes so that they knew that it was lawful for us to bear arms. And because black people did it, see, like the NRA, the National Rifle Association, they stand behind when there's a mass killing in America, or somebody goes into a church and shoots it up. Then the advocates against guns, they advocate in courts and in demonstrations, but they defend the right of white people. But when the Black Panther Party stood up and said we have a right to bear arms, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, didn't back us. They back white people, because white people are the main ones who own arms. And black people who own arms, unfortunately, most of the time they got it illegal, and they're used to kill other black people. So those guns aren't for self-defense, they're for offensive means to commit genocide on the black community. So when they go to court, it's a win-win situation for these Europeans, because a black person is dead, another black person has gone to the morgue, the other black person is going to the penitentiary to work for free. So, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, where is our intelligence? After all that's happened to us, how could we sit here and be so self-destructive? How could we kill other black people knowing that we're going to go to prison? And they have a psychological term in the black intelligentsia community, the black intelligent activist community, and it's called school to prison pipeline. School to prison pipeline. A lot of people don't know this, but in America, they evaluate the prison bed space by our third grade test scores. If this doesn't alarm you, then you're not a conscious person. We're in third grade. We're not even 10 years old. And they've already decided which black people are going to go to prison. And yet we still continue to send our children to their schools. And we make billions of dollars for their school system. We need to leave their school system. There's a school in Chicago, Illinois, on the south side, a high school, all black, all male. And they graduate at least 300 students every year with honors. Why? Because they left the school system. If somebody is advocating a conspiracy against you, and you get the information and you do nothing, then you're aiding and abetting in their conspiracy. You're helping their conspiracy. We have black men and women who join the military, and I consider them in acts of treason. Never would they ever lift up a gun to fight against the government that's oppressing black people, that's poisoning the food, that's poisoning the water, that's putting us in prison, that are manipulating black women to commit murder by getting abortions. Then they take the aborted baby, and they make vaccinations to kill people all around the world. Black people, oppressed people, poor people. And these people who are in the military, they know what's going on, but they pretend that they don't. This is why a lot of people don't read, because reading is powerful, but it also grabs you by the collar and says, what are you going to do now that you know? I had a young woman that I went to high school with. We didn't really know each other that well. We knew who each other was, but we didn't know each other. And I had posted something on Facebook about this Jewish guy, pretty active in the white privilege. He's talking about white privilege and how white people benefit from their white privilege, from being white. And so I had posted, because he's given some really great speeches. I really like what he has to say. I don't know him personally. I don't know if he's sincere, but as far as the body of work, the speeches that he's done, and he's written some books. I've read Tim Wise. That's another book I would recommend. I think his book is White Like Me. I'm a little off on the title, but at any rate, she read my posts and she says, she makes some comment. So I asked her, did you watch the video? Because there was a video, like an hour and a half, 2 hour video. And she says, no. And I said, well, why are you making comments? You didn't even you didn't even watch the video. You don't even know if it's valid or if it's, if it's a lie. Because you didn't watch the video. You didn't gain the information for yourself. And she was like, why should I watch it? So I could be angry like you. So this is the thing that people say. They have this saying in Black America. They call us angry black men or angry black women, because with slavery, we're supposed to smile. We're supposed to be good slaves. We're supposed to be Sambos, and yes, boss, we happy. The Django, no. There's a European man in the United States by the name of Patrick Henry, and he spoke to the oppression of England taxing America on tea. His famous quote is, "Give me liberty or give me death." There's not many kids in the United States who haven't learned this quote. Give me liberty or give me death. This is when you say a statement like that, that's an emphatic statement. That means there's something coming behind it. Just like when Malcolm X says, to be a man, to be respected as a man, to be respected as a human being, we intend to bring into existence in this day by any means necessary. That's an emphatic statement. That's what gets you assassinated. But when you're Patrick Henry, you become a hero to the United States. They make books, they make lectures about Patrick Henry. But when Malcolm says it, he's a demagogue. He's a communist. Whatever you want to say. So we have to understand that there's two Americas. There's white America and there's black America, and then there's those that are in between. Whether they're Mexicans, whether they're Arabs, whether they're even Africans. Because when Africans come to America, in many cases, they side with white America against us, because there's a miscommunication that exists. And that's also one of the things that I want to address in the 155 years. The 155 years, Africa never gave reparations to us. They never claimed us. They never said, we made a mistake. Welcome back home. We'll take care of you. We'll feed you. We'll give you money. We'll educate you. They never did that. Um, and so when you look over the last 155 years, yes, sure, the Europeans have been guilty of genocide and the Jim Crow and all the things they've done to us, but so has Africa in neglecting us and failing to claim us when they're the ones who sold us into slavery in the first place. So when we look over the last 155 years, there's a myth that Africans don't like black people. And I don't adhere to that myth. I don't buy that myth. I believe that it's a situation of misunderstanding, that we don't understand each other, that we've never sat down and had a conversation, just like white and black America, or European Americans and black Americans. We have a very untrusting, unloving, unfriendly relationship. They they started an organization called the Ku Klux Klan, a terrorist organization funded and protected by the United States government to terrorize black people so that we wouldn't vote, so that we wouldn't become homeowners, so that we wouldn't become business owners, because much of their hatred and dislike of us is based upon jealousy. And you won't get that until you become a reader. That Black Wall Street, we were showing them up. Here you had us slaves for 400 years, and we caught you in 50 years. That's embarrassing. So we're gonna blow that up. Tulsa, Oklahoma, called it Black Wall Street. They bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma, and murdered 3,000 black people in 12 hours. In 12 hours. May 31st to June the 1st. 12 hours. They murdered 3,000 black people out of a town of 12,000. Or no, excuse me, 15,000, which is 20% of that town. And so last year we had a terrorist attack, an insane European who went to Nevada, Las Vegas, and got a hotel room and stockpiled some guns and waited till they had a country western concert and shot it up, injuring 500 people and murdering 50 or 50 plus. Um, Yet he was never called a terrorist. He was never. It wasn't considered a hate crime, you know. Um, Last year or the year before, we had a European youth who goes to a church in South Carolina. I'm not sure what city, if it's Charleston, I'm not sure what city. But he goes into this church and pretends to adapt Christianity. And he wants the black people to teach him how to be a Christian. So he gets the drop on them. And he gets their trust. So he goes into the church and murders 9 people. I don't know how many people were injured, but 9 people ended up dead. And what did these insane black people say? We forgive him. We forgive him. Ridiculous. It's like somebody comes and rapes your wife and your children and you say, I forgive them? What kind of man are you? What kind of people will forgive somebody who intentionally comes to their church and murders them, pretending to adopt their religion? That's sometimes I'm so hurt by our actions and our inactions. Just ridiculous. And there was no reaction with the black community. It's just like, because we're so used to them oppressing us. We had a situation in Louisiana where there was 6 youth that went to school, and 3 of them wanted to sit in the lunch area in the general population, but they were segregated. And we're talking about in the 21st century, 2005. I forgot the year. It might have been later. It might have been 2009. I can't remember the year. But these three youth decided to sit in the general population. They come to school next year. There's three nooses where you lynch somebody, that long rope and thick braided. It's called a noose. There was three on a tree at their school, at their high school, letting black people know you're stepping out of bounds. And so the National Guard didn't come in. There was no outcry in the United States. There's no conferences. There's no think tanks coming together and say, what are we doing? But yet black people go into the military and help this government oppress other dark people around the world. Went to Vietnam for 40 years. America was in Vietnam for Michelin tires, raping little girls. We don't know how many Vietnamese youth grew up, their father, American GIs, had came back to the United States and left them. We don't know. We don't know how many in the Philippines. We don't know how many in Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, or Vietnam. But this is what's been going on over the last 155 years. That we have been betraying ourselves and we've been betraying other people around the world. So what happens when these people come to America? Asians come into our community and they sell us fried chicken. They run the nail shops. They run the swap meets. They come in the liquor stores. They come in our community and oppress us. And what can we say? We can't say anything. Why? Because we committed treason. We went to their countries and helped European America oppress them. America could never do what they do internationally if it wasn't for the help of these black people who I call guilty of treason, because they go to these countries all over the world and sheepishly, but they'll lie and say, they'll make excuses of why they're doing it. It's just like a dope dealer who sells dope, or a pimp who exploits women. Going into the military and helping America oppress the rest of the world, and you've been oppressed for the last 400 years, is insane. And we all have family members who were in the military. Cousins, fathers, grandfathers, you name it. But each one of them will make an excuse of why they're doing it and why they did it. It's understandable that because of the economic crisis that we've suffered in Black America, that people went into the military. That's understandable. But it's not acceptable for them to lie and pretend that they're not in treason for what they're doing internationally. America has no more military bases. All the military bases are basically closed. Yeah, there's a few, but most of them are closed. Why? Because nobody's attacking the United States. So when they go into the military, their deployment is into other countries to go destroy their countries, to take their oil, to take their poppy seeds, to take whatever they have. America, since I was a kid in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, all I ever heard was communism. Communism is the enemy to the United States. Communism threatens their freedom. Yet, their number one importer is communist China. America gets all their stuff from China. When I was growing up, there was a thing called Made in America. Sears, Roebuck, everything made in America was good. Much as I don't like this country, Made in America really meant something. It was nice quality, but then they decided Made in America means we have to pay people. So we'd rather go and buy it from communist China, who has child slave labor, and they have no regulations. So one of the problems that we have is that we look at other people and we look at them in this romantic way that they're great people. No, they're just as bad as the Europeans. China enslaves their children and some of the permanent social underclass because they have slavery in China. They don't call it slavery. They just call it low wages, but it's slavery. Slaves made more than what these people in China make. Same thing is happening in Indonesia, Malaysia, countries all across the world. They don't call it slavery, but it's slave labor. That the children can't even go to school because they're working all the time. And so what do black people do? They join this white man's military, this European's military, and go to these countries and exploit these people. That's why they didn't come back telling us about Vietnam. They never told us what happened. Our parents, our father, they never told us because they were just as guilty as that European. Having sex with little girls who didn't have a choice. Their families made them do this for the American GIs. And this same government put syphilis and gonorrhea in black Tuskegee Airmen for 40 years and didn't tell us. Syphilis and gonorrhea, and they had penicillin, they had the cure, but they did not tell us for 40 years because that's how they abused black people. How could you ever trust these people? How could you ever trust them? I'm not anti-white, but there's a difference between right and wrong. There's a difference between right and wrong. The first thing they'll say is, "Oh, he doesn't like white people," or Europeans, however you want to say it. We have European blood in us, as well as we have black blood in us, indigenous blood in us. We're not pure, and that's no mark against us because we were enslaved, so they raped us every day. But I remember growing up, our people being proud because they had European blood, you know. And it far as my family, we have Irish blood. That's where the name Hannah comes from. We have Irish blood. The Irish didn't own slaves because they were poor. They were poorer than us. They were sharecroppers too. But what they did is they became overseers on the plantations. And this is what happens with people. When people find themselves oppressed, they always pick on somebody that has less power. And so the Europeans that I dislike the most are the Irish, ironically, and I'm part Irish. But I dislike them the most because they betrayed black people, in my opinion, more than anybody else. Because the majority of the police departments around the country, especially in the black communities, a lot of times the police commissioners are Irish, and they betrayed us. We married into families with them because it wasn't like somebody would say, "Wow, an Irish married a black." They were poorer than us, so it wasn't. It was oppressed people developing families together, just like the indigenous. We bonded with them when we was escaping from the plantations and things of that nature. In 1850, and this is part of the 155 years. 1850, Mexico offered black Americans independence. Said all you have to do is come to Mexico and become Catholic, and you'll have freedom. Of course, these European devils weren't going to tell us that. They were going to say, "Oh yes, you can go to Mexico." So we had a brilliant black woman they called Black Moses, and her name was Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was one of the conductors of the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a pipeline to get slaves to escape, to go to Canada, to go to other places in the North. And there was many Europeans that helped in the Underground Railroad because we couldn't have done it by ourselves. So I am not a fool, and I know that all Europeans weren't complicit in the slave trade. I knew some of them hated the slave trade. A brilliant book was written by a European woman called Uncle Tom's Cabin. Her name was Harriet Beecher Stowe. So there was always advocates against slavery. Um, People who were engaged in the liberation process. Even there was a newspaper called The Liberator. Frederick Douglass worked for them. He was uh, a brilliant man, an educated man who had escaped from slavery. Um, there was another uh, brilliant man by the name of John Brown in Harper's Ferry, Virginia, who fought against the European government, this American government, um, to help to try to free black slaves. Um, so any thinker would understand and know that this is not a all or none. There's people who don't like the oppression of black people, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to help or to not injure. They don't know how. Unity is one of the most important things that we can do because once we're united, then we could then other people around the world, other communities will um, look towards helping us. When the Black Panther Party had their height, and they had people all over the world, Algeria, Argentina, China, uh, Vietnam, some of the Asian countries um, would 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 take in members of the Black Panther Party and hide them from America. Uh, I'm pretty sure Iran was one of them because Iran, a lot of black people who became Muslim or became Shiites, they moved to Persia and Iran. But once again, my focus is on us on these last 155 years. We've done some things. We created a magazine called Ebony Magazine, Ebony meaning black, uh, but it's not a very it's not a very thoughtful magazine. It's just pictures and a few articles about people in the military or other, you know, actors, actresses, singers, tennis players, athletes. It's just, you know, it shows what you can do when you're oppressed because as a result that we weren't allowed to be in the European magazines, we created our own. So we also created Jet magazine and Essence magazine for women. Um, we had the Negro League in baseball because Europeans wouldn't allow us to play in their leagues because we would show them up. And if we got in there, we're going to take over. And that's exactly what happened. When they allowed us to come into Major League Baseball in the 1940s, um, Willie Mays, Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, basically we took over. And now when you look at baseball, I don't know the percentage, maybe it's 50% black. National Football League, 70% black. NBA, 80% black. Um, Tiger Woods, when he was allowed to play golf, I don't know how many years, but he was one of the top golf players in the history of golf. Venus and Serena Williams in tennis, black females. So if you analyze the lies that America told, those lies were to suppress us and keep our genius down. Because whenever we had the opportunity to participate on the same level as them, we surpass them. There's no question. In the NBA, they have a symbol of the NBA of Jerry West. Jerry West is nothing compared to Michael Jordan and so many others. Jerry West was a great ball player. I don't take anything away from him. But Michael Jordan, he's an icon. And but while I'm on the subject of Michael Jordan, I like to connect the dots. Michael Jordan is another one who is guilty of treason to the black community. Michael Jordan has bought stock into prisons. American prisons are 37 to 50% black prisoners. And here's a person who played for Chicago Bulls for almost 20 seasons, 18 seasons, 20 seasons, whatever. He's from North Carolina. He's made enough money with the NBA, with Nike. Do you see him opening up schools, helping the south side of Chicago where he played basketball, and the black community loved and idolized him and supported him buying his shoes? No, he invests in prisons, knowing that black people are going to be put in prison. And what do black people do? They go out and buy his shoes. No black American should ever wear Michael Jordan shoes, nor should they buy them. They should not buy them for their children. They should not buy them for themselves. And black athletes playing in college or in the NBA, like LeBron James, who says something about LeBron James, the great basketball player from Cleveland or Akron, Ohio, wherever he's from, who says something recently to the effect about the NBA being owned by old fat white owners, or whatever he said. But he had an opportunity to own his own shoe, or to support Stephon Marbury, who owned his own shoes. But you have people who will talk the talk but won't walk the walk. You're worth almost $1 billion. 785 million, that's $785 million. Yet you will wear Nike because white is right. Create your own shoes. That's what independence is. That's what freedom is. Freedom is creating your own schools, creating your own banks, creating your Black Wall Street. That's what freedom is. Slaves don't want to leave the plantation. When slavery was ending, many of the slave owners would say to the slaves, "We can't afford to pay you." And they would say, "Master, it's okay. We don't know what to do with money anyway. We'll stay on and work for you, Master. We love you, Master." That's a slave. And today we have slaves in the inner city who gangbang. You have Crips and Bloods. And what are their colors, these Crips and Bloods? The color of the American flag. The Crips are blue and the Bloods are red. And what is the white? The white is the white man in the middle, giving them guns, dope, and giving them time. That's their colors, the color of the American flag. Most of them don't know. They're not conscious, so they're not thinking about it. But don't you see the trick? Don't you see the irony that your color is the color of the American flag? The CIA, many people in the conscious community said the CIA is responsible for the Crips and Bloods. I believe they are. They was able to dismantle the Black Panther Party within 5 years. Within 5 years. Whereas Crips and Bloods have existed for over 40 years. And the FBI hasn't stopped them. How were they able to stop the Black Panther Party? They infiltrated it. You have police officers or FBI agents who pretended to be in the Black Panther Party and infiltrated it. Why don't they do that with Crips and Bloods? Because Crips and Bloods sell cocaine. They kill other black people. They keep the black people depressed, oppressed. I've often said this. If I was in the government, police, FBI, whatever, which I would never, because of their destruction of the black community, but I could stop gangbanging in 1 year. I'd go to the judges and say, look, I'm going to round up all these cats, males and females, and I'm going to tell them, you got 2 months to stop this. And whoever doesn't stop, you're going to jail for I'm going to give them, what are they giving? They're giving people, black youth are going to prison, get 90 years. No violent crimes. For maybe selling drugs or whatever. They're throwing the book at them. Yet these Crips and Bloods are going in and out, in and out, in and out. And what are they doing when they're in? They're raping people. They're killing people. They're turning people out. Here's a guy who goes in prison. He ain't no criminal, and they know it. He ain't no hard cat. He ain't never, you know what I'm saying? He never, you know, he did some little penny ante crime, but they put him in the penitentiary with all these hardcore gang members. And so they'll take his money, they'll rape him. What kind of men are these? Come back to the community, and now we got a problem in the black community that many of these guys that go to the penitentiary become faggots. They're on the down low, and they're coming home and giving their wives and their girlfriends AIDS because they're in there messing with dudes. So over the last 155 years, they've done more damage in the last 50 years up until 1965, 1968. We were striving and moving. And it looked like we were on the verge of crossing the finish line, of being a whole people. So what do? They assassinate Malcolm. They assassinate Martin. They assassinate Fred Hampton. They assassinate Bunchy Carter at UCLA. They infiltrate the Black Panther Party. They infiltrate the Nation of Islam. They infiltrate the Black Church. Any black organization that existed was infiltrated by the FBI. So the FBI used the black community to destroy the black community. And these men were going home with their wives every night and acting like they were breadwinners. No, they were in acts of treason against the black community. And the only thing that gives me comfort in all this is knowing that all those guilty people will pay on the day of judgment. That they will be in hellfire for what they did. That's the only thing that gives me comfort. That the slave owners that brutalized us, that sold us from plantation to plantation, that broke up our families, and did all these things that they did, they will one day pay. I want to share something with you about Black America. And I have a quote from the Black Panther Party. The quote is this. They say, "We are not outnumbered. We are outorganized." I believe this with every bit of air that's in my body. That they don't have anything on us. We've took their best shot. They've done everything that they could do to us. And we're still the baddest people walk on the face of the earth. Their children love LeBron James. They love Stephen Curry. They love Tupac, Michael Jackson, Prince. Ain't nobody like us. But what good does that do when we don't love ourselves? That's where we stand today. 155 years after slavery, we do not love ourselves. Wake up, Black America, because all we have to do is love ourselves. And once we love ourselves, victory is ours. We're not outnumbered. We're outorganized. At any given time in major cities, Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, Houston, Los Angeles, Brooklyn, Oakland, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, St. Louis, Missouri. At any given time in all these cities, you have 100 black millionaires. Because what? The NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, rappers, actors and actresses, singers. Any given time, if you don't have 100 black millionaires, you still have those cities worth $100 million because of those individuals. Some of them are making, so the people who are playing in the NBA or NFL that are not making a million, it doesn't matter because LeBron is making 30 million a year, Russell Westbrook 40 million a year. So when you add it all up, when you add all that money up, Seattle, Washington, and all these other areas where you have professional sports, at any given time you have Phoenix, Arizona, Portland, Oregon, all of these places. You have black people worth millions, 100 millions to $1 billion, like Chicago, with Oprah Winfrey and Louis Farrakhan, and Jesse Jackson, and all the Common and Shaka Khan, whoever it is, Chicago Bears, Chicago White Sox, Chicago Cubs, Chicago Bulls, all those people in Chicago with Oprah Winfrey, as I said, that's worth over $1 billion in the black community. Go to Chicago. They don't have a supermarket. They don't have a hospital. They don't have a university. They don't have anything that says that we are successful. Here in Los Angeles, we had Wilt Chamberlain playing for the Lakers in the 1970s, all the way to Kobe and Shaq to Kobe. So we've had millionaires in Los Angeles for the last 40 years. Go to LA and see how destructive black Los Angeles is. So here in LA, we have Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Venus and Serena, DJ Quick. We got all these, Anthony Anderson. We got all these, Kobe, Magic, all these multi-millionaires. Go to Compton, go to LA, go to Watts. You cannot tell that we have got that kind of money because these individuals, once they get that money, they don't give back. Ice Cube, one of my favorite rappers, love him. But Ice Cube, I have this to say to you. In one of your songs, you say to the dope dealer, you say, and all you dope dealers, you as bad as the police because you're killers. You got rich when you started slinging dope, but you never built us a supermarket so we can spend the money with the blacks. Too busy buying golden Cadillacs. That's what you're doing with the money that you're earning. Exploiting us like the Caucasians did. For 400 years, I got 400 tears for 400 peers. The bottom line is that Ice Cube is very intelligent. Public Enemy, very intelligent. X-Clan, very intelligent. The Ghetto Boys, very intelligent. But all of y'all are millionaires. And what have you built in the community? Where's your school? You know what's going on. Ice Cube, all of y'all. All you gotta do is listen to your music. Ice Cube, X-Clan, Public Enemy, Ghetto Boys. Very conscious music. The Lynch Mob. But yet you haven't built a school. So are you just talk? Why are you singing these lyrics if you're not prepared to do something? Build a school in South Central LA. Ice Cube, you just started a 3-on-3 league. Build a high school, a private high school like Mater Dei. Build a black school and get the best black coaches, the best black teachers, and then the basketball team will be number one in the country. The football team will be number one in the country. The track team will be number one in the country. Then we'll be able to afford better teachers because the sports fund your whole school. Now let's put a black university together. And no more black athletes going to Duke to play basketball. No more black athletes going to Alabama to play football. We're going to the black school. Now the black school is number one in football, number one in basketball, number one in track, number one in tennis, number one in golf, number one in economics, number one in political science. It's time for us to compete, not survive. We've survived long enough. Now it's time for us to compete. What about all the rappers? What about all the comedians, the Kevin Harts, the Michael Epps, all you people making millions of dollars, and you're talking on the D.O. Hughley, all of y'all talking on the Breakfast Club. I love y'all. But when are you going to build something in the black community? When are you going to go behind closed doors and have a serious talk with each other? We had a black president for 8 years. What good did it do? Nothing. It didn't do us any good whatsoever. Why? Because he's whitewashed. He's controlled by them. Michelle, everybody, oh, Michelle's on every magazine. Oh, Michelle. What is Michelle? Why hasn't Michelle and Barack gone to the black community after his presidency is over? Okay, maybe you couldn't do anything while you're the president, but now you're not the president anymore. Go to Chicago. Go to Oprah Winfrey. Go to Bill Cosby. Y'all get your money together and say, hey, people aren't going to just stop killing. But if you put some economics, you put some universities, you put some businesses, now they'll have incentive to not go to prison. You see? And get Michael Jordan to stop investing in prisons. Because Michael Jordan is in treason to the black community. Barack Obama is in treason to the black community because he became the president to help white supremacy flourish. He was the president for 8 years. He never did one single thing for the black community. When Trayvon Martin was murdered in Florida, Barack Obama said he could have been my son. And he could have. Looked just like him. Could have been his son. Yet, the guy who did it, George Zimmerman, nothing happened to him. If that was a black person doing that to a Jewish person, because that's what it was. George Zimmerman is Jewish and Trayvon Martin is black. If it was the reverse, he would have never saw the light of day. Same situation. Security officer, whatever you want to call him, and George Zimmerman was going in, he kills him by accident or whatever, however it was. He would have never saw the light of day. And the black community did absolutely. We don't even talk about Trayvon Martin anymore. Situation happened in Ferguson, Missouri. All over the country, black people being murdered by police. Mike Brown, Los Angeles, all over. Same thing in Oakland, Fruittown, on the train track. And as Malcolm once said, how could you be so violent as you was in Italy and Germany and Vietnam, but when it comes to your own community, you have no blood. You turn the other cheek. No, that's cowardice. There's no way that Koreans should be selling us fried chicken in any of our communities with all these black millionaires. Oakland, California, we got the Golden State Warriors, we got the Oakland Raiders, we got the Oakland A's, we got the San Francisco Giants, we got the San Francisco 49ers, all these black millionaires. Take a state like California. How many black people play for Oakland A's, Oakland Raiders, Golden State Warriors, San Francisco Giants, San Francisco 49ers, LA Lakers, LA Clippers, LA Dodgers, LA Rams, LA Chargers, all these San Diego Padres, uh, uh, Anaheim Angels, Sacramento Kings, all these billion dollar organizations. Yet Black America and all these people are playing. The majority of athletes on these teams are black. Draymond Green, Steph Curry, all these people, none of them. Kobe Bryant, none of them. They don't give back. Yes, LeBron put up money for a school, and I applaud him for that. And if everybody did what he did, at least a school, that would be a great start. But don't forget we need supermarkets. Don't forget we need hospitals, because we can't trust these Europeans when it comes to medicine. They vaccinate black people and destroy the black community. So we have to have our own research. We have to have our own universities. Dr. Sabian, some people say that he was assassinated. We have to be independent in America. We don't have to separate in terms of leaving the country, but we have to be independent. Look at the Mormons in Utah. They were persecuted in Philadelphia. They were persecuted in New York City. They migrated to Utah. Now they own Utah. That's their state. The governors, the senators, the congresspeople, the mayors, Mormons. That's unity. Now nobody would think about messing with them. And now they're one of the most successful people within the groups within the United States. The Marriott Hotel is owned by the Mormons and many other real estate businesses. And they don't have nowhere near the money that black people have. Nowhere near. Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is in treason of the black community because his fat mouth talks shit to the black community. Come on, people. And he's around here having sex with white women. And I don't believe for 1 second that he raped any of these white women. They had sex with him. And his treason is not raping women. No, his treason is not building black America with the resources and the talent and the time that he had. How could he when he's out here sleeping with all these white women? Sinbad, the comedian, said if Bill Cosby had raped any of these women in 30 years, have you ever heard of a man punch him? Have you ever heard of a man shoot him or stab him? Nothing. These women, they have husbands, they have brothers, they have sons, and nobody in 30 years. That's absurd. That's absurd. But look how European America did Bill Cosby. All these other white people, Hugh Hefner, all these other white people. The Playboy Mansion, women sitting around naked all day. And Bill Cosby's 80 years old and you put him in prison? Bill Cosby didn't rape any of those women. Those women were trying to make it in entertainment. Hollywood. They're trying to make it. Sex favors is nothing in that industry. Why would he have to rape all those women? That's absurd. A millionaire has to rape these women? That's absurd. But once again, he had this high standard for the Cosby Show and for Lisa Bonet and all the other actors and actresses. And behind closed doors, you're sleeping with white women. 30 to 100 of them. And we don't even know how many that you slept with that didn't come forward and try to capitalize on your fall. You wanted to buy NBC. I get it. Take that $1 billion that you was going to buy NBC and open up hospitals in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in Atlanta. Open up hospitals and hire black physicians, hire black maintenance crews, hire black economists. That's more practical than NBC. We don't need NBC. We don't need to watch TV. There's enough TV. Let them watch TV. Let's build Black America like we built white America. Know about Benjamin Banneker. Know about A. Philip Randolph. Know about James Baldwin. Know about all these great people that built America, that fought America. We wouldn't be here today if they hadn't fought. And so Crips and Bloods stand in treason to the Black community because of the genocide. And these Black police officers, Black men and Black women, and you sit in there and these white people, these Europeans are killing Black people, and you go to work with them every day. And you know what they do, and you're still okay with that. Or you go into the military and help America go to other countries, poor oppressed countries, and you go and fight oppressed people who have nothing. You stand in treason against humanity. Maybe not treason to a country, because this country don't have no morals, so you can't stand in treason. But you stand in treason on a human rights level, on a moral level, in what you do. In 155 years, it is our time to wake up. As Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes song featuring Teddy Pendergrass Jr., wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. Wake up, Black America. We need our own radio stations. Yes, we have radio stations in LA like KGLH, owned by Stevie Wonder. It does absolutely nothing. We have something every year in October called A Taste of Soul, which is total masturbation. And in the movie A Piece of the Action with Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby, James Earl Jones, Sidney Poitier was talking to the kids at the Benjamin Banneker Community Center, and he said, You're here, you are at the Benjamin Banneker Community Center, and you don't know who Benjamin Banneker was. And you mask your ignorance as being cool. He said, that's just masturbation. It feels good, but it doesn't produce life. That's what Black America's doing today. We're masturbating. We're not living. Marvin Gaye in one of his songs says, this ain't living. No, 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 no. He said, this ain't living. He's talking about trigger-happy polices. Panic is spreading. God knows we're heaven. Make me want to holler and throw up both my hands. And in that song, he says, this ain't living. Public Enemy had a song, Fight the Power. You got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. How do you fight the power? You can't fight the power with guns, with bricks, with knives, with your fists. You fight it with your brain. That's why there's a saying that the pen is mightier than the sword. But when you find Black writers today, what are they writing? Gangster stuff. Fake gangster stuff. Hood rats. That's what they're doing. Write things that uplift the community. We have Def Comedy Jam, we have Def Poetry Jam, and in the last 155 years, we have Black people calling each other nigga. The most popular word in the Black vernacular is nigga, the word nigga. I challenge every one of you who use that word to start calling yourself, instead of nigga, call yourself slave. What's up, my slave? How you doing, my slave? Call yourself a slave. Be real about it. Don't pretend that the word nigga is not powerful, that it doesn't mean nothing. No, that's just, in terms of endearment. That's masturbation. It's a lie. That's like calling yourself a slave. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am a slave and I promote slavery. Stop lying. And many of you are my friends and my family. And I love you, but I hate that weakness about you. I know people who say the word nigga in in a conversation might not know he said it. He done said it 50 times. I'm counting. I'm counting how many times he's saying it. Foolish. But will argue me or debate me about how valid it is to say the word or how meaningless it is to use the word. No, that's ridiculous. You don't hear white people saying, hey, you white devil. You don't hear Jews, saying, hey, what's up, Town? Or Mexicans saying, hey, what's up, wetback? Or Muslims saying, hey, what's up, terrorists? It's ridiculous. That is the most absurd thing that I've ever heard. You have the audacity to use the word that the slave man used to break you. And then you have the audacity to pretend that it's okay. That's a word of endearment. No, you're foolish and you're a coward. Because you should be using words to uplift the black community, not to cripple the black community. And in all those cities that I named, where we're using that word, where we're rapping, the rappers are using it, the comedians are using it. You can't be funny without saying nigga 20 times. Something's wrong with you. We grew up, we never heard the word nigga in a song. The rappers started doing that, and not the original rappers. Curtis Blow wasn't saying that. Grandmaster Flash wasn't saying that. Sugar Hill Gang wasn't saying that. Kumo D wasn't saying that. Eric B. and Rakim wasn't saying that. That came later. Rap was revolutionary. It was poetry put to music. Johnny Guitar Watson, Tina Marie, other people used rap. An expression. And expressing yourself. But when the Jews took over it, they started having black people say the N-word, calling each other nigger. Niggas with attitude. Ice Cube in one of his songs says, you niggas with attitude, who you fooling? Stop calling yourself nigger. Nigga, nigger, niggo, whatever you want to try. It's foolishness. Call yourself a slave, because that's what you really are. You're a slave who won't leave the plantation. A man once said, if I have to put chains on you, you're not my slave. I put chains on you because I know that you're trying to escape. But when I can take those chains off you, and I can give you a pass and give you a horse and buggy, and you won't escape, then you're my slave. When you will name your children after me, now you're my slave. Where you will go to school, but you won't learn anything to benefit yourself and your community, now you're my slave. So ask yourself in 155 years, who's the slave and who's free? And that's the problem. That the majority of our people are slaves, and willing slaves, and won't do anything to think their way out of it. Slavery is a mindset. There's a myth of the Willie Lynch letter. Who knows if the Willie Lynch letter is a true thing or not? It doesn't matter if it's true, because the premise, that the foundation, the basis of it is true. That you divide and conquer, that you break these people down, and they will be slaves for 1,000 years, even though they don't have no shackles. You got black people in Atlanta, Georgia, and Los Angeles, and all the major cities opening up strip clubs. Our women were raped, were subjugated to breastfeeding white children, and couldn't use the bathroom because their bottoms are considered filthy, but their breasts could feed these white children. All that black women have gone through in America, and black men turn their back on them and go marry white women and put black women in strip clubs and call them bitch and hoe and hoochie. You're in treason of the black community, black man. You're in treason. And you're victimizing your own sisters, your own daughters, your own mothers, your own nieces, your own cousins. That's who these black women are. They're your family. What kind of man would allow his sister, his daughter, his cousin, his mama, his grandma to be in that situation? Because you're a coward. Because the white man told you it's okay to do it. Because you see him do it, be above him. Don't be like him. Be above him. Yes, he does it. He doesn't care about white women. He don't even like white women. He really likes black women, but he knows if he has a black woman, he's going to have black children. But you can't wait to get your hands on that white woman. That white woman in slavery was just as complicit as that white man. You saw the movie The Help. You saw the movie The Butler. You saw Roots. You saw how evil white women have been. And that's one of the problems that we have. Same thing with you black women in the inner city, in the hood rats, in the ghetto, living in the projects, smoking dope, going to prison, putting tattoos all over your body and your face, becoming swingers, letting your husband turn you out and have sex with all his friends. Wake up, because you are in treason to the black community. In 155 years, we have made some progress. But in the last 50 years, we went backwards. We went backwards. And what good is it with all these people getting degrees? You got a woman, I won't say her name, who says that the penitentiary is the new Jim Crow. No, it's not the new Jim Crow. Jim Crow is legal segregation. Prison is worse than slavery. Because when you were in slavery, you still had a relationship with your wife and your children, and you saw them every day. When you're in penitentiary, you don't have a relationship with your wife. You might be able to talk to her on the phone. You might be able to write her a letter. But you can't physically be with her. So it's worse being a prisoner than it was a slave. Because a slave, you still can have relationships with your wife and your children. In a penitentiary, there's nothing but men in there. So what's up with all you men? You like being in prison with nothing but men? Something's wrong with y'all. And guess what happened to the black community now? Now it's flooded with homosexuality. San Francisco used to be the gay capital of the United States, and now it's Atlanta, Georgia. They're wearing stilettos and bras and pumps at black colleges and universities, historically black colleges and universities. So the dean has to come and have an emergency meeting and say, hey, y'all got to stop this. So over 155 years, we saw assassinations in the black community. No community in America is like the black community. We lost Billie Holiday. We lost Tupac Shakur. We lost Biggie Small. We lost Dr. J's son. We lost Michael Jordan's daddy. We lost Venus and Serena's sister. We lost Jam Master Jay. We lost Michael Jackson. We lost Prince. We lost Whitney Houston. All these people were murdered. You won't find any other community like that in the United States. And there's probably some that I'm probably leaving out. But that's what we've had to face in America over the last 155 years. And it's time for our people at this juncture in the 21st century to wake up and start being a whole people. I was a neglectful father. I had a son, and I didn't raise him. I was a sorry punk-ass man, and many of you are equally as bad. My mother stayed on me. She said, son, don't give up on your son. He needs you. And more importantly, you need him because that's your blood. And so I kept on trying and kept on trying. And finally, my son forgave me. One of the most important things in my life, my son forgave me and gave me a chance to be his father, to build a relationship with him, to bond with him. And now as a result, I have 3 grandchildren. But the biggest regret that I've had in my life was not raising my son. And no matter how great our relationship for the rest of my life, I can't make up for those years that I missed. And I'm saying that to say to you that I'm making this lecture, but I'll be the first to tell you my faults, my idiosyncrasies. I don't have a degree from college. I've been to prison. I've been out of prison for almost 29 years. I haven't gone back because I refuse to give them my body and my mind as their slave. I've been homeless. I've struggled. I slept in cars. But when I was homeless, none of you would ever know I was homeless because I carried myself with dignity. I go take a shower. I go wear clean clothes. It's time for us to stop being homeless in Los Angeles, New York City, Las Vegas, Long Beach, all over the country. Homeless black people. Shameless. On drugs. On drugs. Giving up. Other day, man tells me, can you help a Vietnam vet? No, I can't help a Vietnam vet. You worked for the government. You were in treason of the black community. Now you expect me to help you? Go talk to your government. That's who you worked for. You telling me about you being a Vietnam vet or Iraqi vet? You work for the most powerful government on the face of the earth, and they refuse to pay you. Then how come there's not a organization where you guys are out here telling young black people don't go into the military? Because you are in the act of treason to the black community. And how you aid and abet? Because you don't say nothing to the next generation. They got to find out after they've been in there 20 years. Come home, end up on dope or alcoholics like you. No, you're in treason. And some of you deserve to be out there homeless because you're a lousy human being, what you did to those people in their countries. How do you sleep with yourself? And you went and bombed their countries. You never had justice in America, not one day. But yet you trusted America. You trusted that white man to tell you to go over there and bomb somebody else. He didn't even have to give you a logical reason because you was going to do it anyway because you're his slave. You carry his name. You carry his religion. You carry his English. You're a good slave. You're a good slave. And to be a slave that accepts his plight, that's worse. That's the worst plight that could ever be. Look at Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Been in the Nation of Islam 60 years. And his name is Louis. What kind of slave is that? What kind of man that knows what he knows keeps the name Louis? You love that white man. You worship that white man. Why is your name Louis? You've been all over the world. You're a rich black man. You can go to the Hall of Records and change your name anytime you want. But you love that white man, Louis Farrakhan. Louis fraud and a con man. That's what you are. You're not an imam. You're not a sheikh. You're a minister. You're a minister, Louis Farrakhan. Yeah, that's exactly what you are. You're a minister. A perpetrate minister. And you're not a Muslim. A Muslim is one who submits to the will of Allah. You don't submit. You submit to that white man. That white man loves you. Because if you stood up and became a real Muslim and a real leader, the majority of black men in America would follow you because you have credibility. So they think. But you will never do that because if one day you decided to do that, the white government has already got you covered. They're ready to assassinate you at the drop of a dime. But because you're in treason of the black community, they love you. How is it they assassinated Fred Hampton 50 years ago in Chicago, and you're in Chicago and they never touched you, not one time? Because he was real and you weren't. At 21, he said, I am a revolutionary, and he meant that. You don't mean that. You ain't no revolutionary. They killed Dr. King, the apostle of peace. Why? Because he said, I oppose the war in Vietnam. Well, common sense tells you if he opposed the war in Vietnam, then intrinsically what he's saying is, I oppose black people being in the military. He just didn't have the guts to say that. But that's what he's saying. Because if you oppose the war in Vietnam, then you oppose the war in Iraq. You oppose the war in Afghanistan. You oppose the war in Syria. You oppose any of these wars because they're all the same. White men controlling the world. Global white supremacy. That's what that's about. So when Dr. King, who got paid $1.5 million with the Negro Six, said, I oppose the war in Vietnam, now he's a threat. Now he's got to go. The March on Washington, we endorsed you, we helped you, this and that, and now you wanna say you oppose the war in Vietnam? Can't afford that. And that's what America does. They watch black leaders. They watch you and they'll help you. They'll give you money. They'll give you organization. They'll give you whatever you need as long as you obey them. And if you obey them, what are you? You're their slave. But once you step outside of that and decide to become independent, you're gone. And a real man, a real revolutionary like Fred Hampton knew that. But he didn't care. He wanted the liberation of black people by any means necessary. But you don't. And you're in treason of the black community. Michael Jordan, you're in treason of the black community. Crips and Bloods, you're in treason of the black community. El Rukins, Peace Stone Rangers, whatever you want to call yourself, you're in treason of the black community. You got a brother in prison who's controlling these people. You don't think for yourself? You think that it's okay for black people to kill each other in Chicago? Some dude is in prison who will never get out? And y'all can't think for yourself? Come on now. Do you think that this United States government can't stop you from doing what you're doing? You're killing other black people. They want you to do what you're doing. If the Crips and Bloods stopped killing, stopped selling dope, they would indict all of you tomorrow because they got a rap sheet on all of you. They know who you are. They know where you live. They know who your woman is. But you sell dope. A multi-billion-dollar business. You sell dope. If you stop selling dope and you stop killing, they will eliminate you. And all of y'all would be doing life sentences. So you're sellouts because you know this. I'm not telling you nothing you don't know. You're in treason of the black community. Black women, get out the strip clubs. Because you're our mothers, you're our daughters, you're our sisters. How can we marry y'all when y'all doing this? And if a man does marry you or does fall in love with you, what does that say about him? And you already know. You don't respect him because you said, damn, I was a stripper and he fell in love with me. You'll never be able to trust him and he'll never be able to trust you. But if you rehabilitate yourself and you stop doing that, see, that was the magic of the Nation of Islam in the 1950s and the 1960s. They got people off dope. They got women off the street. They were doing great work. And Malcolm was with them when they was doing that great work because he was one of the main ones that was behind it because he had rehabilitated himself. And there came a time when they started to clean the Nation of Islam up. They started getting rid of these people that were parasites preying on the black community. So he started to clean them up. So some of the members of the Nation of Islam, John Ali, Raymond Sharif, Joseph X, Louis Farrakhan, Louis X at the time, they wanted Malcolm dead because they knew if he kept going, he's going to get rid of all of us. And it would have been a real organization. And what have you done in the last 53 years since the assassination of Malcolm? Nothing. Use Muhammad Ali. First you said there's no entertainers in the Nation of Islam. Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay at the time, beat Sonny Liston. The next day you change his name to Muhammad Ali, and he's the poster child for the Nation of Islam so that you can get other black people to join. Hypocrites. Black America, wake up. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. Black radio station, black hospitals, black supermarkets, black farms. You have to be independent in America. Koreans come to America, what do? Go to any town where there's Koreans. They have their own banks, they have their own hospitals, they have their own schools. They have their own economy. I took somebody once driving for one of these car companies to, they were at UCLA. They went all the way to San Diego, Chinese, to go shop in a Chinese community. And this community, every shop in the parking lot was Chinese. How can you go to Denny's? How can you go to IHOP? How can you go to McDonald's? How can you go to Starbucks? How can you go to these white restaurants? Create your own. You got all these black millionaires that played basketball, baseball, football, boxing, golf, tennis, rappers, comedians, Denzel Washington, Eddie Murphy, all these people, yet we don't have any businesses in black America? How is that? Because it's good enough to be around white people. That's not black love. That's slavery. We have a new year that has just come up, 2019. Are you still going to be their slaves? Most of you will. But you have no excuse today. If you can read and write, you can verify anything that I'm saying. If I'm saying something wrong, it's due to my ignorance, my lack of knowing. If I say something right, it's not because of me. It's because of all those great people who came before me, who actually did the work. So upon us today is a time to act upon what we know to be right.